Hi, and welcome to another episode of SMECO Connects. I'm your host, Sonja Cox, and I'm joined by my co-host, Tom Dennison.
First podcast of 2026.
Yes.
Wow, this is great. Such a nice way to start off with 2026 with two great guests from ACES Power Marketing. So if you gentlemen wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves, tell us what you do, and then we'll talk a little bit more about ACES and we can take it from there. So go ahead.
Sure. Brian Lee, and I am Executive Director of Portfolio Strategy. Been with ACES for going on 19 years now. I've done various roles there, from operations to trading, strategy, management. But right now within the strategy group, we really focus on medium to long-term strategies for our members that consist of hedging strategies for various power purchases, looking at valuations for assets, helping our members run requests for proposals for RFPs for long-term purchases, and just a whole slew of things that sometimes might not have a specific place to fall at ACES and then end up falling onto the strategy group as well. So get a lot of unique projects coming our way.
I'm Kevin Ellenberger. I'm the Director of Portfolio Strategy at ACES. I work on Brian's team to do all the things that he just described. I joined ACES in 2017, trading, kind of in the operations group, kind of real-time power. And from there, kind of transitioned into some more kind of modeling focused roles, like modeling the transmission grid. Did that for a while, did some managing kind of in that group, and joined Brian's group a couple years ago. And in the strategy group, I'm currently the strategist assigned to SMECO. So I'm kind of the point of contact in terms of delivering all those services.
Oh, you'll be coming up on 10 years next year.
That's right.
The big one.
Well, thank you, Brian and Kevin, for being on. We just want to talk a little bit today about, what you're seeing out in the power markets and how things are going and capacity prices and all that good stuff.
It is crazy. That is for sure.
I think it's important to just stress what ACES is. And ACES
and our relationship.
Yeah. ACES for us you are the folks who secure our power portfolio. And I think SMECO is unique in the state of Maryland that we have a managed portfolio where we have short, medium, and long-term contracts that make up what we call the standard offer service, that all of our folks who are watching, when they get their bill, they see that standard offer service cost. And we, SMECO, take a lot of pride in our managed portfolio approach. I know Sonja, under her leadership as president, and before that, when she was CFO, headed up all of that that process for us. So you all are located in Carmel,
Yep.
Indiana, and it's a great thing. I've only been there twice, I think, but seeing the trading floor and all of you all doing the work that you do is a very educational thing for me. I know whenever I went there. So I just kind of wanted to level set that you all are the ones who procure the power that those of us in Southern Maryland are using. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're an energy risk management company that provides those energy risk management services to our members. And we were really founded out of the mid to late 90s with a lot of the changes in the markets and the deregulation of the energy markets, and co-ops got together and said, well, it's hard to compete. How can we further help ourselves compete in this industry, this deregulation, the more competitive atmosphere that we're at? So 4 co-ops got together, founded ACES, pooled their resources together to create ACES in 1998. I think we opened our doors in 99. And then SMECO joined. You guys joined in 2005. I think were our 13th member to join ACES. So we are now at 24 members. And we also all member co-ops, G&Ts and distribution co-ops. And then we have over 70 customers that range from independent power producers, merchant generators, other utilities that also use our services on a kind of an a la carte basis. But we've grown a lot and learned a lot. And along the way, we've helped bring new services as well to help clients grow. So
you definitely have grown a lot since we joined.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went from having a full requirements contract on December 31st with Pepco Energy Services to then not having anything. You know, it was a little scary, but we had all the contracts already set up. So you guys did a really good job coming in and helping us put together risk management policies and helped us put together our hedge plan and, you know, just from scratch, really. And I know all your other members are G&T co-ops. We're the only distribution co-op. But we're kind of unique as we own transmission as well. And technically, I guess you could say we're like a paper G&T.
Yes.
We have all these contracts.
I would say so. Yeah.
But yeah, it's fun. I enjoy that part of my job. I always have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we enjoy working with SMECO and our other members. We really see ourselves relationship wise as an extension of SMECO staff. And you've probably heard us say that before. And I really feel that kind of flow through when I go to meetings and when we're talking, because a lot of times I'll catch myself saying or we, as if I am a SMECO employee.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just that unique relationship that we have like with our members to be able to interact that way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's a great model.
Yeah. So there's so much talk right now in the industry, I'll just say, especially in the state of Maryland, about the generation deficit and the supply increase that is all being kind of borne out in rates that we're all paying. And unfortunately, those have led to the, you know, higher electricity costs that we're seeing in the market. And what we buy the power for is what we charge, no markup. However, just that dynamic of the supply and demand that's going on in our region. Why don't you just kind of give us a little snapshot of what you guys have seen and where we are today versus where we are, say, 5 to 10 years ago? Sure.
So, 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, I think you could really kind of draw a line right at COVID.
Okay.
I've been at ACES for about 10 years, so about 10 years in the industry. And, it's maybe overly simplistic to say that almost nothing happened the first 5 years, but I'd say every year looked a lot like the one that came before. Patterns and prices were like fairly predictable. And then really since COVID started, we've almost kind of been on this, every other year cycle of something just radically changing, the dynamics in the market. So first we had everybody working from home in COVID. Prices went through the basement and everything was just really dead, almost kind of eerily quiet in the markets. And just when we were kind of getting used to that being the new normal, with everyone working from home, with demand really low, we kind of got in that mindset. And then 2022 hit. And with 2022, you had the war in Ukraine and lots of geopolitical instability that really hit the natural gas market hard, right as natural gas was becoming kind of that kind of core thermal technology to kind of pair with renewables. And as the gas market took off, you see prices just absolutely blowing out, particularly once you got kind of into the mid 2022 year. And we were all kind of buckled up and ready for gas prices to be really high forever. That kind of subsided. 2024 comes and we start hearing about this thing called data centers. Of course, data centers have been around for a while, right? But especially the AI data centers and the power hungry nature of, the technology that's in those. That's when really 2024 is when we started to see just kind of that projected demand go up. And then the next forecast was higher than that. And then the next forecast was higher than that. And it's been a real shock just from the standpoint that although we've seen changes in the generation mix kind of over the past 10 years and some of the, changes there and the new technologies, load's been pretty flat, electricity demand for the most part until all of a sudden we need to find a way to power these data centers. Mm-hmm. And so the mixture of increasing demand due to expected data centers coming online with the retirement of really like rock solid thermal generation for a variety of reasons, but, particularly coal, some nuclear, some old natural gas. That's kind of an ugly mix right? Especially as you look at supply and demand, and how that kind of bears itself out in market prices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're opening some. Dwayne Arnold is a nuclear plant that's going to reopen, right?
Yep, in Iowa. Yep.
And then isn't there one in Michigan?
Palisades
and 3 Mile Island.
and 3 Mile Island. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Dwayne Arnold and the 3 Mile Island are all data center contract driven. Palisades is not at this point. It's just being opened by the G&T and the people that own it, but they're not directly tied into a data center contract. Like 3 Mile Island, for example, essentially purchased by Microsoft effectively, right?
Right.
With the to run, and then we're seeing similar things with Dwayne Arnold and NextEra that was put out in the news recently. So I think that is the play, right? Data centers looking towards, they want clean, they want baseload reliable tech, and the main way to get that is nuclear. I think the problem though is that there's only so many nuclear plants, and the ones that really can be restarted are kind of already in the process of that happening. And so where do we go from here is one of the questions.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is sometimes difficult to understand is when people hear capacity costs and what that means. And if you all were to try to explain that and how that impacts utility rates, how would you describe that?
I would say that, the capacity is the ability to generate electricity when you need it.
Okay.
Right. And
that's
so
a great way to.
That's the difference, right, between renewables, which people are a fan of, and they have, really nice qualities that we like in various ways. But the fact that you can't necessarily count on a solar generator or a wind generator when you need it is a pretty significant issue. We talk about the kind of impact of data centers on, projected electricity demand, but even the type of resource that we're going to need for the future has kind of changed. A few years ago, we were, all kind of gung ho, particularly in this state, for solar development and kind of the, influx of renewables. And in order to kind of capture just that, be able to generate that electricity during that peak hour, you needed renewables, so we thought, and then maybe kind of like a short duration resource, like a short duration battery or like a gas combustion turbine or something like that. But that is not the kind of demand that we're seeing with these data centers, right? So you're seeing all of these customers come in, and all of a sudden, instead of wanting to kind of peak during the day and then consume less energy at night, they want to be on all the time.
24/7.
Right.
And so that is really driving the, kind of technology shift away from kind of some of these resources that either don't provide, kind of that reliable capacity, the ability to generate it when you need it, or even the capacity to do that over a short time. You're seeing things shift away from that towards, like a combined cycle resource or a nuclear plant, or even in some cases keeping, kind of these legacy coal units online because they do provide that ability to generate it when you need it. And that's something that the market really values, not just for, normal electricity demand, but particularly for the data centers as well.
Yeah, I think the data centers kind of took us a little bit by surprise at the beginning of 2025 because they're in, Northern Virginia, a lot of them. And we hadn't really even heard anybody approach us or anything about them until we started getting phone calls in early last year, calling around and call me, call Tom, call engineering, So we kind of had to learn fast how to handle this. So, but Tom's handling the intake for those, and and we have a team that internally. But one of the things that I've heard or has been talked about is some people think that the PJM load forecast is too high because of the way data centers kind of do things. Like, they may be talking to us about one, but they may be talking in some other area of PJM, and wherever they can get it the quickest is, the one they're going to go with maybe. Is that true, or what do you guys think about that?
I do think there's some of that double counting. You'll have companies shopping their large load or data centers with multiple co-ops, utilities at the same time. And that's where you get that double count. PJM, when they take those forecasts, when they were doing their long-term forecasts, they try to account for some of that. I've heard that they look at more, they don't always take the co-op load. Sometimes they'll just say, we're going to take the, like Duke, for example, will say, okay, we'll take what Duke says over like what Central says or something like that. Because they've got to pick one side or the other. And thinking if one's in one territory, one's in the other. There's no way to really exactly know. PJM's got a kind of a methodology that they're using, but I do think that there is some double counting going on.
I know they're trying to work on that.
Yeah.
So.
Right. It's certainly an art and not a science, is I think the bottom line. And one of the things that you've seen recently, particularly amidst kind of public outcry over some of these capacity prices and, the impacts on ratepayers, is you've seen, PJM actually reduce, kind of the slope of some of these, demand increases that they're expecting to see over time. So that could be reflective of maybe kind of combing through those a little bit more carefully.
But the price of capacity, that's meant to incentivize new generation build, right? So it needs to be at a certain level for somebody to invest that kind of money to build new generation.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head here. I think the PJM capacity market as it is intended to work is to signal that when the market is short, prices go to what they call CONE or cost of new entry, which is to signify this is the cost to build a new power plant that an entity needs to gain from the capacity market as revenue in order to make that work. What we've seen here in the last 2 years is that rather than PJM allowing the market to go to CONE when they are short, they've put in these floors and caps on the market where we've got a price floor and a price cap. And I think it's great for the load side. But what it does is it's counterintuitive to what the market is designed for. And it's hard to get and incentivize new generators to build when you're capping their cost.
Because it's an artificial signal.
It's an artificial signal
to the market, right?
Right. I think, the whole going to CONE methodology has its own issues. It's, not perfect by any means. It's an imperfectly perfect system, right? Where, as say the market does go to CONE and you have all these merchants that come and say, I want to build this generator or whoever, and they build that. And then once everyone builds because prices were high, they've got a couple years where they're bringing in those high prices, but then everybody else built too. So then prices go. It's a supply demand, right? So the thought is over time with supply demand cycles that you regain, but that doesn't always work.
So if you two, you guys have been working in the power markets now for a long time. Is there an easy answer to try to fix this other than building new generation, or is that the answer? Could wave a magic wand, if you will. Like, what do you think is the best way of dealing with all this?
Well, it depends who you are, right?
Yes.
Because obviously there's a lot of competing interests. Certainly that's certainly one perspective that all you need to do is just build generation and we can build our way out of it. There's certainly some pitfalls there. So for example, if we decided in a room right now that SMECO, we want to go build a gas turbine, we can't actually physically get the turbine delivered until the 2030s. So the lead times. Just
because of the lead times and the shortages, right?
Right. And so there's a shortage of the actual steel in the ground that we need to be able to kind of make it up on generation alone. So I think probably it'll be some combination of, an all of the above approach to generation mix. I think you're already seeing, kind of competing camps soften their stance a little bit. And, instead of being against renewables, or against fossil fuels, it's all of the above. We're going to throw the kitchen sink at the problem instead of retiring your coal plant. We're going to keep it online, sometimes even by extraordinary action if necessary. And we're going to make sure that it stays online to provide reliability to the grid. We're going to build as much gas as we can. There's still going to be a role for renewables and some of these other kind of emerging technologies. So that'll be probably a kind of kitchen sink solution on the supply side. And then on the demand side, I think ultimately there's going to have to be some sort of market-based solution or other mechanism to really comb through some of these additions and make sure that they can actually be, safely put on the grid and served, without all of the adverse impacts that are possible if it's, kind of continues unchecked.
Yeah, one of the things PJM's looking at is interruptible load. So any new large data centers that come online that I believe large loads above, I want to say 50 megawatts or greater, have to report to PJM of their intention. And then PJM's looking at implying some kind of load that can be curtailed or interrupted during peak periods. So not all the time, but it's going to be like during peak emergency periods. Can we interrupt or curtail your load? And I think if you ask the data centers, they're not going to want that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It might be one of their only ways to come online. But those are certain things that are being talked about at PJM as well, right? We can, everybody who's a large load, they come into this interruptible pile of load that, that we don't count in the supply or in the load stack on the capacity auction.
Well, we certainly don't want rolling brownouts, rolling blackouts. And I think ultimately that's what you hear. And I think there's real concern amongst regular folks out there about when they see that Maryland imports so much of its electricity, that the data centers want to gobble up so much of the existing supply, and immediately you can jump to that conclusion that this could affect regular folks' reliability. And so I know it's incumbent upon SMECO and with our partners at ACES, and I know, Sonja, you've talked about this, that we're doing everything we possibly can to avoid that scenario. Right. And it's because of, the work that you guys do that we do that. So, but, from the other side of the coin, is the rolling brownout blackout scenario something for PJM that is real, that you guys have heard about, seen maybe in the forecast?
I haven't seen it in the forecast, and I don't think you would.
Right.
But I think if you look at the current trajectory of what the capacity market's showing, how in this last 27, 28 delivery year auction that we just had for June 26th through June 27 through May of 28, we were 6,000 short to what the reliability requirement would be in the capacity market. And so now that's capacity, right? PJM does have a lot more energy to actually use.
Okay.
So as Kevin mentioned, capacity is the amount of energy that can be counted on, that can be turned on when you need it. That doesn't mean that we don't have the energy there, right? So for example, the wind resource might be worth 100 megawatts of energy when it's operating at its max. But from a capacity standpoint, maybe it's only good for 20 megawatts. And so you do have to take that into account. So PJM's not really short per se from an energy standpoint, but I think if the current trend continues, they could get pretty close.
Yeah, they're certainly getting shorter,
right.
And power is becoming more scarce. So where you'll see kind of that 6,600 megawatts that are missing that Brian mentioned, kind of in that capacity market, you'll see that effectively in terms of a reduced reserve margin, which is one way to think about the excesses that we have, right? And you always want to have reserves laying around so that if a line goes out or a unit trips offline or something bad happens, that you're able to replace it without those kind of, load shed events where all of a sudden you're not able to serve all the electricity demand. Has that happened yet? No. Are we starting to get a little bit closer to where that's realistic? Yes, and probably within, the next couple years, if these shortages in the capacity market materialize in the energy market, that's when you'll see kind of those contingency events where, maybe it's not so much that based on our load forecast, we think we'll definitely, be unable to fill it. But if things go wrong, things could escalate pretty quickly from there.
Right.
Have you all seen many retired coal plants come back online in the last couple of years, or is it just too expensive, too environmentally controversial to do that?
Nothing off the top of my head that I can think of that has come back online. We've had several that have delayed retirement,
right,
or have been kept on by PJM further. And Brandon Shores and Indian River, for example. Brandon Shores here in Maryland. And then we also are seeing some coal units being transitioned into co-fire resources as well with natural gas. And so that is an option that some folks are looking at that have older coal resources or resources that may be nearing retirement. The problem with that is there's a lot of cost associated with that, but then also when you transition a coal unit into a natural gas unit, it still operates kind of like a coal unit, right? It still has a lot longer startup time, and heat rate and everything than what you'd see a normal CT be. So they're not really like a quick start CT. It's still kind of coal, still have that big boiler you have to heat. You're just heating it up with gas now. So it's a little different.
Where do you, I guess my final question is probably around nuclear. Where do you see us going with that? Not, we talked about reopening those 3 plants, but a lot of people talk about these small modular reactors and, just, your opinion about how far away you think some of that kind of technology might be.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the way that I've thought about it for the last few years, because, the term small modular reactor, which is, kind of what this emerging technology is called, it's been bandied around for a while. And, you go and talk to different people at conferences and kind of get their take on it. And I think everybody wants to be the second person to build one. And
exactly.
I think what you're finally seeing is that tech companies are willing to be the first ones to do it, to support their data center development. So, even if the rest of the ride is bumpy in terms of kind of integrating all these AI data centers into the grid, if we look back 10, 20 years from now on this moment and, they were able to kind of, swallow the financial risk of kind of experimenting with these advanced nuclear technologies, we could look back on that as a good thing that came out of this.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think SMRs will come to fruition at some point. I think it's probably 2040 realistically. I mean, you have several different companies and they're all slightly different with how their designs work and the fuel that they run off, looking at like Oklo or NuScale or GE Vernova, they all operate slightly different. The only one that has an approval from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is NuScale with TVA right now.
I saw that.
But I think I also read something recently. I think it was Meta who is signing a deal, I guess, in quotes with Oklo and others, I believe it was Oklo, to continue to investigate the technology and things like that. So definitely, like Kevin said, nobody wants to be the first. It's still very costly. And I think until technology is to a place where we can reduce costs a little bit more, they're a ways off. But I think once that first one gets built, I think you'll start seeing them pop up a lot more.
Well, I tell you, this has been a very poignant and timely conversation, I think. And I know it's just a pleasure for me to have you all from ACES here so that our viewers can kind of put a name with the face. We talk about you all the time. So it's a nice thing that you all were able to be here and share some thoughts on this. So thank you all for being here. And Sonja, do you have any other?
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. You guys will be seeing more of Tom. I'm going to have him start sitting in on the BROC meetings as well as our semi-annual strategy meetings. So he's well informed when he's in Annapolis and talking to the legislature about what we're doing.
That's great.
Great.
Very good.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well,
Thank
appreciate
you
you guys having us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Very
Safe
good.
travels.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome.